Hello everyone, my name is Elijah Dickinson, and this is my video tutorial. For my Writing 235 class, I had to learn how to do a skill using only the internet to teach myself how to do it. So, my goal was to learn how to knit a scarf, and I succeeded. So now I'm going to show you guys what I did to be able to complete a scarf. What I did to make this scarf is I used size 15 knitting needles. They're a little bigger and they're a little easier for beginners. Also, the way you can tell is they have little 15s at the top, so when you're looking in the store for them, make sure that they say 15. They're really good for starters. And I didn't use plastic ones, these are more metal, and it actually helped a lot because it was just easier to slide the yarn up and down. So which leads me to the second thing I needed, which was yarn. Now there's different types of yarn. So on my first scarf, this one, I did this wool thick yarn, whereas you can use thinner yarns or even use yarns that are made out of different material, but this is the yarn that I did for this scarf. It's a little thicker, a little tougher to use actually because of the wool. So that's something you have to be careful for when you're picking out your yarn, that the fibers are woven more tightly, because that's the mistake I first made, and it was kind of a mess trying to do this at first. So I actually had to restart this scarf a couple of times. So for this video, I will start out by making this scarf here using these needles and this yarn, but I will show you how to wrap up your scarf using this yarn, which is a little bit more thinner, a little tighter. You might be able to see a little better. And these knitting needles. These knitting needles are size 10, and they're a little bit smaller, and I'll be able to do a little bit more detail with them. So, here's how to knit a scarf. So firstly, I have my yarn, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take about just about a foot of yarn and leave it hanging off. And I'm going to take this part of my yarn, this middle section, and make one loop, hold it where it kind of intersects there, and then create like a do not enter kind of thing. So that way there's a circle with a line through it. Now what I'm going to do here is take one of my needles, and it's going to go through the back of this start of this loop and go in through the other side. And then when you pull, you have a good starting point of where your scarf's going to be. And then I'm going to take this part that's left over and just weave it right into my scarf, because then it'll just be a less step to cut it off and try and hide where my scarf began. Now, with the yarn this thick, I'm going to want to do about 10 10 little loops, stitches all the way from to my needle, just so that way it isn't thicker than I want it to be. Doing any more than 10 would probably be a little too much width for your scarf and leave you with having to get more yarn to stitch in for the length. And that's just the experience that I've had with this type of yarn. I actually had to redo my scarf, like I said earlier, because I knitted it 30 instead of doing 10 or 15, and I ended up with a crazy thick scarf and not enough length. So now what I'm going to do is start Alright, so I start with my loop on my left hand. It's easier for me to do this way. So what you're going to do is you're going to come behind the needle in the loop. From here, you want to take your yarn, and I kind of twist it so that way I don't get confused. and it goes around the top of that back needle. And then you're going to pull it on through, keeping it on this needle. Slide it on up. And I'm doing this really slow for your purpose. The purpose of showing you guys how to do this. And it's going to go back onto this needle. So there you go. There's 2 that I've knitted on that one little section. So this is 1, 2. I'm going to go in the second one. It's a little tight right now because it's doubled up, but it shouldn't be tight when you're doing your normal scarf. Again, I twist, bring it around, slide this down really carefully. It's coming on through, go to the top, put it back on. Now, something that I've figured out myself is that I kind of have to play around with it. It doesn't always come out the way that I want it to, and like these kind of twist a little bit. So maybe this goes over here, and just kind of figure out what looks right to you and go from there. So this looks really messy right now, but probably on camera. But off camera, I can see exactly where I need my threading to go. Also, no one told me when I started knitting that your hand actually really hurts a lot. This is something I've come to find out, like you're using muscles that you're not used to using. And it was really interesting for me to learn this. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is all just from being able to use both sides of that knitting to kind of twist and wrap around. And this is all things you really have to play with for yourself. All of the videos that I've watched, it's nothing as it's not when you do it in real life, it's not as easy as it appears in videos, even though I seem to be struggling. But then again, this is my second scarf, so that's why. But once you get going, it's actually pretty easy. And although this is my second scarf, I did have to restart that scarf twice, not just once, twice. So right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 more to go. And it's actually a little bit of a struggle right now, and that's just because this yarn unwinds very easily. Alright, I'm gonna finish casting on off camera, and I'll bring you guys back when I am finished and ready to start my second row. Alright, so I have my 10, and like I said, this looks super tiny, but it's going to expand maybe like that much as I go on. So this is 10, and the way you can tell is right down here. It's kind of tighter, tightly knit. I'm trying to get it in focus for you. There we go. It's tightly knit, but you can kind of see these little loops starting to form, and that's just the bunches. So if you count, this is the first one. Right here, the second, third, fourth, fifth, the sixth, the seventh, 8th, 9, and 10, because I ran out of that extra yarn. So before we were taking it off, keeping it on this needle, and then returning it back to this needle. Now what's going to happen is we're going to keep on transferring from needle to needle. So your right-handed needle goes in your first loop behind your needle, your main needle. So that way it's crisscrossed with your right needle behind your left needle. This goes around. You don't have to do it too tightly. You're gonna want to pull it right on through. Now, because this yarn's a little tricky, I sometimes have to kind of make sure I'm doing it right and reshape it for myself. Now, since this is hooked on this needle, this stitch behind it is still on the needle. We need to get past that. So we push it on up, and if I can get it so that way I can show you, you drop it. So you don't have to worry about it anymore right now. That's on that needle. And you're going to do it again. That was one. Kind of pull it a little bit, not too tight though, because it's going to make it hard for you. Around, and pull it on through, and then drop it. So that's two. What you want to do is you want to make sure you're keeping count, because something that I went into a lot of trouble with my first time around was that I didn't really count, and then I ended up, picking up and dropping and picking up and dropping, and it was just a very wonky, lopsided scarf. So now I understand why people made fun of beginner knitters in TV shows and movies and stuff. So drop it and pick it up. Behind. Sometimes they don't catch, and that's okay. I'm beginning. I'm learning. Wow. Gonna give me a little trouble, so I just kind of pull it on tighter. And really remain... Ooh. This one's just giving me trouble. Remain a lot in contact with this main needle back here. Let's see if I can just persuade it. There we go. Just couldn't see it because of the camera angle. And push on through. This index finger, your right index finger, is going to kind of hurt a lot when you first start. Something I discovered. But that's because of the way I was knitting originally, which is just pushing my index finger really hard on top of it. So try and get maybe a thimble or something you can use to kind of help ease that pain. As you can see, I kind of messed up a little bit. I had a little bit, didn't twist it enough, and I'm going to have to cut that part off, but a lot of it's just woven into this bottom part. That's nice and good, and it has a really good base start for where I am at. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, halfway there. This is a very time-consuming thing, so if you aren't very patient, or if you just don't have a lot of time on your hands, knitting probably isn't the best thing for you. And I'm not that patient, so the fact that I'm able to sit down and do this is kind of cool for me. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make sure you keep making sure that your thread is going to stay on. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. 8. I'm always losing grip of my needle. But that just comes in beginner's territory of not knowing really where to rest things while you're trying to do it. I know people use their right hand normally to loop it around, but for some reason that's just not comfortable for me. And like I said, you kind of have to play around with everything and get comfortable for you. That was my 8, 9. Come on. There we go. Sorry, it's a little off camera. It's just a little difficult at first. And last but not least, my 10. So, there we go. Looks a little messy. And you know what? it's for people watching this probably their first one, so it's okay to be a little messy. I'm just taking what my leftover and kind of pulling it to make sure that it's nice and secure. But yeah, that's the beginnings of a scarf right there, besides this little piece. So I'm gonna show you again. So now that we're here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I count every single time. I normally count on the way. Sometimes I lose track. So I like to always count at the end. So again, we're going behind. Oh, what am I doing? I like to switch hands. Some people can do it this way, but I like to switch hands. So, going behind, loop it around, and through, and drop. And as you go, it'll get easier and easier. I'm going to kind of just do this for a while on camera for you, so you guys can see how the process is. It just gets easier and easier as I do it. The tension on the yarn isn't tight. And it'll just pass through each loop very simply. It's very easy to purl. I think that's what's called. I'm not very good with the terms yet. I heard casting and purl, and I think I'm using them correctly, so. Keep on going. Some people, instead of doing the weaving, like to do like a real slip knot, like a real knot. And that works as well. I just like the idea of being able to hide a little bit more where my yarn is. I mean, you can always do a slip knot, leave some extra hanging off, and that way you can weave it in still and still have a very secure beginning. See? So there's my third row. And if I count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Something that confused me, just for warning, is I used to count on this side, and that's very different. Because on this side I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And it really messed me up. So be sure to count on this side. Just because this is the beginning of the next row. And it's really just going to mess you up further if you keep on doing that. So I'll do a couple more just to show you kind of the process, so you can kind of see it forming a little bit. And as you can see, it is expanding, like I said earlier. Also, you don't have to cut this off. What I did, which I'll show you at the end, is when I ended it, I kind of wove it through. And that could work at the beginning as well. So I'm just going to keep on knitting for a little bit, and then I'll go off camera, and I will do some knitting on the other set that I had, that I showed you earlier, the blue yarn and needles. So I can show you how to end it, because this was a little bit more tricky to end, whereas I can do a little quick patch on the other set and quickly end it for you guys. So as you can see, like, this is my fourth row now, and I'm just kind of picking up speed. I'll go a little slower. But it's really simple, really easy going now to pick up my yarn, coming behind, picking it up, dragging it back, and dropping it. It becomes a very simple rhythm to follow. And see, you can kind of see a little bit more clearly. These are little woven parts in between. You're gonna have like stripes like this all throughout. And I will show you again on my finished product. So I'll do one more on camera so you guys can see slowly. And if I count, hold on, I like to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Awesome. Going through behind. If you can kind of see, I'm remaining friction, and the thread is already, the yarn is already over here. So I just have to keep contact to make sure that I'm not falling out of this needle. Coming through, looping around, picking up and dropping off, going around back, looping around, pulling it through, dropping off. I think the most important thing is to make sure never do it, never loop it around too tightly, because it's going to create a really weird visual pattern-wise when you look at your scarf. Also, it's just going to make your job a lot more difficult to weave these rows, because the tension is just so much that it's just really difficult to do anything. See, and that's what happens. So this is actually really good. So I accidentally dropped it with 2 rounds to go. So what I do is just, there'll actually be like a hole that I can just go in, pick it up through, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So perfect. I only dropped 1, my last one, through, around, and in. So if that ever just happens to you, the loops will down here will remain in shape, and you can just thread it right on through, so you wouldn't have to worry. But as you can see, this is actually becoming a scarf. I'll do a few more off camera of this one actually, so that way you can see how this progresses a little bit more, and then I'll switch over to the other yarn. Okay, so I just did about 4 rows off camera, and this is what it's starting to look like. And it does look a little thin right now. Once you take it off, it's just kind of expand to like that width, which is a really good width to have. You can see that all the little weavings. I think that's really interesting to see it weave and develop as you go. This type of scarf, with this thread and whatnot, it's time consuming, and as you can see, this is about I believe 7 or 8 rows knitted, and it took me 20 minutes, just over 20 minutes to do just this. And the scarf that I have here is my completed scarf. You can see all the woven fabrics and designs. This is my end. Yes, this is my end. You can see here, this is where I wove it in. So the ending, actually, it's knotted off over here, but all of it is woven in throughout. This scarf is pretty lengthy. It stretches from my arm to arm, and it's very, very comfortable. This is the beginning of mine, as you can see over here. I also wove it through. This was a slip knot, though. This wasn't woven like the other one is. But this is just, you can kind of just tuck it in, really. It's loose woven, so I can literally just tuck it in. Where'd it go? So that's nice and fun. So I'm going to go off camera again, and I'm going to do a small portion on the other yarn and show you how to finish a scarf. So once you're all done, what to do. Okay, so this is a little bit more clear to see. This is thinner yarn. This is purling 10, and it's the thinner yarn. So right now, this is about a little bit, 1 inch off about my wrist, but still very, very thin width scarf for for a human, an adult human. I was gonna say very, very small scarf for a baby, but no, it would be perfect size for a baby. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to show you how to cast off. So starts pretty same. You're going around, back. Oops, almost caught that. And going around, going in, and dropping, and I'm gonna go in back here, going in, going through, and dropping. Now here comes the tricky part. So you're gonna go in through this first loop, like that. You're gonna want to be really careful because you're gonna want to pull the loop that is supposed to be staying on here. So the first comes over the second, and you want to drop that second and keep the first on there. So now you have this as your first, this is your second, drop it, come back, take that first one, and I dropped it. So here's where I get to start making adjustments. So you can see that that's still intact, that loop, so I'll be able to just put it back on. I don't want to edit out any of my mistakes because they might be mistakes that you guys have, because it happens to me very often. So again, I'm going to pull it on through, back to this first one. I'm not going to drop the needles this time. Awesome. And again, going back. And by this time, you're going to be a pro. Because at the end of your scarf, you're just going to be a pro at these basic little in, out, over. Just tricky keeping that loop right there. And keep going around, pulling through. Oh, coming a little off camera there. It's hard to, I'm trying to look so that way I'm not looking at my camera screen. It's a little difficult. I feel like I'm doing this backwards, but I'm not. Oops, there we go. And dropping. And going back here. And pulling it through. And dropping that. And doing that. And keep going. Coming on through. And this is just becoming second nature after a while, because it's just the same repetitive thing over and over again. It just becomes very easy to do very quickly. Now, I was lucky enough at the end of my other scarf that I had just enough yarn to not have to worry about cutting off any extra. I was just able to go, and then when I thought I had enough left to finish a row and then knot it off, I did that. Picking it up. Oops. And as you can see, this part is just dropping off and it has a really pretty little beginning and end. Again, this is the little mini short version. I made a scarf for a doll, basically. Pick it up. Dropping it down. This is all for the purpose of showing you guys. So I'm on my last one. And I'm going to do one final last loop around. Bring it up in here. And drop it off. So, ooh, I don't want to do that. I have this tiny loop here. I can pull it a little bit more. So that way you can see that there's a little hole. I'm all done with my knitting needles for now. So I want to keep this hole, and I cut the end of my yarn. I'm going to put it through and pull it tight. And there we go. This isn't going anywhere. This is secure. Nothing's gonna come unraveled. So I basically made a mini scarf. And what I like to do now is I'm gonna take this extra. I'm just gonna actually take my needle now, and I can go, since it's a simple little weave, it's a loose weave, I can come on through a hole over here and kind of just wrap this around and pull it on through. Well, maybe not doing like that, but basically I should start this way. Just finding an opening like that. Take my extra yarn and just kind of pulling it on through. So I flip it around the other way, find another hole over here. Pull it on through. And I can go as much or as little as I want. I can do a whole row, I can do just 2 or 3. I can do it down the side, I can do it the entire, until I'm completely finished with how much ever extra yarn that I have. But I'm just going to do a couple, so that way it's hidden in there. I'm just actually going to bring it back down this way. And hide it in a corner, because there's a lot happening in the corner anyway. That it'll be just less of a distraction. So see, there's a lot happening in this corner down over here. So where it started, I think. Flipping back and forth, it's hard to tell. So I'm just gonna take my scissors now. I'm gonna take my scissors now, and I'm just gonna snip it as closely as I can without damaging the rest of the scarf, mini scarf. Alright, so there you have it. As you can see, I have a little mini product right here. I have a scarf. You can see all the little, like I said, these little weavings back and forth. That'll be throughout the entire pattern. So with following the steps I showed you from the start to kind of continuing that start all throughout the entire scarf, and then finally the end. So this is actually what this would be: the beginning down here, your middle, and this was where I ended it. Very, very pretty, and with the holidays coming, they make for a great Christmas gift. So going from all of this, I have a bigger product here, and it's something that you can be very proud of. You can keep it, and it'll be an accomplishment of your own. You can give it away, and your loved ones will absolutely adore it. I know my mom loves this scarf. I made it for her. So if there are any other questions or comments, you can leave them down below in the comment section. That's where I'll be leaving the YouTube videos that I got my knowledge from. And I hope you all enjoyed this video.